Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of In the Spotlight. I'm Mike Kenichi. Really excited today because I would say I was probably in sixth or seventh grade at the time, and I remember watching today's guest on roller games, which was an updated version of roller derby. And she has done so many things in her career prior to that and has a great book out that we're going to talk about, but she really is a credit to the business, to acting, to entertainment. It is my honor to introduce to you Miss Tammy Locke. And Tammy, thank you for coming on today. It's a real honor.
Hi, Mike. Thank you so much. I truly appreciate it. And it's my pleasure. Absolutely.
Well, I really do appreciate it. And Tammy, interestingly enough, a lot of people probably wouldn't realize this, but your career really began for you at the age of 2. Am I correct?
Almost 18 months.
Yeah. So I think talk about that story a little bit because it's a pretty cool story.
Well, it is in my book called I Can Do Anything. But what happened is that my sister, Cheryl, who is 5 years my senior, was already in the movie business. And they had called her up to come down to audition for a Alcoa premiere Fred Astaire hour called The Voice of Charlie Ponce, starring Robert Redford, Diana Hyland, Bill Bixby, and many, many others. And she was going up for the role of Sally, which is Diana and Robert Redford's daughter. And so my mother usually had someone watch me because I was only 18 months. And what happened was my mother couldn't find anybody to watch me, so she had to take me with her and Cheryl. So she left me with the secretary of the director, I guess it was, not quite sure who it was. But anyway, she left me with her, and she actually got up and went out, got a cup of coffee, and left an 18-month-old sitting there on the couch playing. And so since I knew where my mother and my sister were, which was right there, I mean, they were literally in the door, in the room right next to me. I got off the couch, opened the door, and it hit someone. When I opened it, I walked in and I said, "Mommy potty, mommy potty." And the director and the producer and everybody looked at me, and they looked at my sister, they looked at me, they looked at my mother and said, "We want her, not her." But the whole thing was so funny because my sister was actually really happy that I got the role because they had wanted her to play a younger girl. And when you're like almost or 7 years old, basically, you don't want to play someone younger. You want to play a big girl.
Yeah.
So it all worked out. My sister was happy. I was, happy, and they built me a pool on set, and it was a beginning of a wonderful career.
Right. And it's probably hard to remember you're at such a young age, but to be able to start out acting,
Yeah.
working with Robert Redford and Diane Hyland, that's not bad at
Oh,
all.
yeah.
That's a pretty great introduction to get
That's
to play,
right.
the daughter of those characters. So, I mean, did you get to know Rob?
Exactly.
Did you get to know the two of them later on in life, or not as much as
No,
you would hope?
no, unfortunately, once you're finished with that particular project, you move on to other things. And that's exactly what I was doing. I did a lot of commercials for Hammond Organ and Franco American, and just a whole bunch of commercials and things like that. And then I got the role of Kathy in Once a Thief with Anne Margaret and Aileen Delon. So I was flown to San Francisco where we filmed it, and I did that as well.
And correct me if I'm
And I
wrong.
don't know if anybody knows this, but Anne Margaret, for the very first time, will be signing autographs on January 10th or 11th. I'm not quite sure if that's the exact dates, but it's January. It's the second week of January at the famous Hollywood show. And she's never, ever signed autographs here in California before. So that's a huge deal.
Yeah, definitely.
And I plan on going to see her.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it was now during that movie as well, it's a pretty cool story because you objected to the clothing they wanted you to wear because you had
Yeah.
just got new clothes and you said your mother would be mad if you got dirty. So that's kind of funny that an innocent kid who's doing a film says that to the, producers, directors, whatever. But that was a pretty cool story. So talk about that a little bit.
Well, what they wanted me to do was get on top of my father, who was just shot, and he was
Yeah.
bleeding all over the place, and I had just gotten the new clothes, so I didn't. My mother was very strict. She used to make us, memorize our lines and things like that, and we were always, told don't go outside without being dressed appropriately and things like that. So it's just something that was instilled in me growing up, is just be appropriate all times.
Right. Now let me ask you, you were a little older by then. What was it like to work with somebody like Anne Margaret? Because she is, she's one of the real trailblazers of Hollywood. She's one of the best.
Exactly. She was absolutely wonderful to me. She even gave me her orange. Uh, um, I can't remember if it's a Swedish horse, and she gave that to me. But she was so wonderful to me. She loved on me all the time. So did Alan Delon, and sadly he just passed. But she was just so wonderful, and we'd been friends ever since. That's one that I actually held on to, I guess you could say, over the years and stuff. So I still know her to this day. And so I plan on visiting her at the famous Hollywood show in Burbank, California.
Yeah, and I mean, I if I was any fan that's out there that has that opportunity to go do that, I would definitely go do it because I mean, that's like a once in a lifetime thing. As you said, she's never
That's
signed a autograph
huge.
before.
Yeah. And people are flying in all over the place because it is being held at the Marriott. So people are flying in just to be able to meet her one time. It's kind of a neat thing. My first father in the business was Robert Redford, and one of my first mothers in the business is Anne Margaret. So, and then I was in Hang 'em High with Clint Eastwood. It doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah, and I mean, talk about that a little bit, Talk about that a little bit, Tammy,
Well,
because
I
I'm
had a very small part, but I made the best of it. Clint Eastwood was just so wonderful to me. He's just a wonderful, well-spoken man, and he's gracious and kind. And I didn't have such a big part, but I did have a part in it. And a lot of people always ask me, why isn't your name on the DVD, on the cast list? And they flew me in at the last minute, basically, to just do a quick part, and that's probably why it happened, is because I was a last minute ad. So
right. Tammy, one of the things it's kind of bothered me over the years. I don't know how you feel about it. I I, I feel like TV's changed a lot, and we're gonna get to the Monroes because that's a great story. But I just feel like TV series back then, while they had some comedy, there was always drama in there. Like I think of shows like Family Ties and the Cosby Show, things like that. They always had comedy, but they also had dramatic scenes as well. And now I just feel like TV has just went strictly with the comedy and nothing is serious anymore.
yeah,
How do you feel about today's TV?
it's certainly not like it used to be.
Yeah,
I think one of my highlights of my entire life, I guess you could call it, was when I went down, and this is kind of off the subject, by the way. I went down and um, reviewed Hidden Figures with Kevin Costner. And when he came off stage, I talked to him, I introduced myself, and it turns out that his very favorite TV show growing up, watching all the time, was The Monroes. What I find sad is that The Monroes has never, ever had a reunion, ever. the Partridges, the Waltons, Little House on the Prairie. Everybody's had a reunion.
Yeah, yeah,
And here the top thing is that all of the cast members of the Monroes are still alive. Are we going to wait until they're dead and then have it? I don't know. I just find that very sad. But Kevin, at the time, I told him, I said, I have a script that was written, 20 or 25 into the Monroes history. And I said, would you please, please, bring back the Monroes? Let's do something. Let's collaborate. And he said at the time, now this was like 7 years ago, I guess it was. He says, well, I just signed on to Netflix to do a show. I didn't know what it was. It turns out it was Yellowstone, but
yeah.
he would have jumped on the bandwagon and possibly could have done a reunion movie or show or something, but I wish somebody would bring it back before everybody's dead.
Yeah, and it's a great show, and let's talk about that a little bit because again, you had to play one of the things about TV back in the 60s, the 70s, and especially the 80s is the younger child plays a big part in a lot of those shows because let's face it, I mean, everybody loves to see an innocent kid just being a kid, having fun,
Yeah,
but watching them grow up and stuff. And that's what Amy Monroe was really like. But what was different about the Monroes than so many other series is the kids had to care for themselves. Like they had to,
exactly.
they didn't have a, they didn't have parents. They had to kind of do it on their own, and that's
Yeah.
what it's so special. So just talk about how you got the part for Amy Monroe, and talk about that series a little bit.
Well, I actually I actually got the part by my mother was being called to for me to come in and audition. And I don't remember who the producer was at the time, but my mother and I showed up and I literally ran right past her into the producer's office. I guess he was a producer. I'm not quite sure, so don't quote me. But anyways, I jumped up into his big, huge executive desk and threw my feet up on the desk, and I got the phone in my hand and I put it up to my ear and I just started talking as if I was, making all of these $1 million decisions, and he says, well, if she's got enough, huevos basically to do that, she just landed the part of Amy Monroe. I didn't even have to audition. What I did was spontaneous. I wasn't even told by my mother to do that. It's just something that I did, and I wanted to pretend that I was a bigwig of some sort. And so that's how I got the role of Amy Monroe. And what a lot of people do not know is that the first episode where the mother and father are lost, basically, that's called The Intruders. The episode was about Amy Monroe being extremely sick and meeting Indian Jim. And what happened was they were inducted. There was a trophy that was given to the Monroes, and for the first episode as being one of the greatest episodic episodes ever. And so that was inducted in the National Cowboy Hall of Fame. And you can actually see it on, pretty much if you Google it or whatever. But the National Cowboy Hall of Fame um, got the trophy basically, and it was inducted into the what was it? It's in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, and it's at their museum. So what a proud moment knowing that the episode was not just about mother and father unfortunately dying in the Snake River. It was also about Indian Jim, um, helping Amy to get better because she was dying.
Yeah, and I mean, to me, Tammy, one of the things that always bothers me is sometimes networks don't give these shows enough of a chance either. They panic, excuse me, they panic when the ratings aren't what they like, and I always say they jump the gun sometimes because I felt like the Monroes should have lasted a lot longer than it did. It had a nice run, but it should have been
Yeah.
longer, and I just feel like networks are guilty of this all the time. They don't give these shows enough of a chance to build momentum. And sometimes they cancel the best shows on TV. And I always felt that was the case with the Monroes.
I totally agree. On Facebook, there is there's a lot of groups on Facebook. Some of them are closed or private or whatever it is, and some of them are public. And we have a big, huge group of the Monroe fans on Facebook. And so, people are able to talk to me, and we text back and forth and stuff like that. And I have an email, Tammy at tammylocke.com, that people send me, emails about how they love, the TV show. And it's just been a wonderful, wonderful memory knowing that people still remember us out there. And I just wish a network would come forth because, our cast is still alive, and it would just be wonderful to possibly, um, allow them to air the show, and maybe we'd be sitting there, and the host would be asking us, what do you remember about this episode and stuff like that, or we could introduce the episode, or just something that allows us to come back and allow the fans to see us, as we are today.
Yeah, I really do think I hope it's something that'll happen, and you can never say never. I mean,
And as
I
you can
think
never say never.
I think that's the great thing about sites like Facebook is you really get to see just how many people love these shows because these, like I said, when these shows are off the airs for so many years, they still have this cult following that people follow everything they do. And I know if like the Monroes had a convention, like a Comic Con or whatever, you would get
Yeah,
a lot of people that would go because people still do have, you know, uh, affection for that show. They really do love
they
it.
really
I'll tell
do.
you right now, like anybody that hasn't seen it, and I know a lot of people have, but anybody that hasn't, I mean, you almost get disappointed because you want more. You see it. And I always say this, and I wanted to ask you this, Tammy. What do you think Amy Monroe, how do you think her life would have turned out? Do you think she, after she got out of high school, where did you see her going in life, like as far as your character?
Well, that's the whole thing. I do have someone that wrote a script, and how Amy Monroe ended up. She ended up as a singer in a saloon.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
she did that. And the funny thing is it's very similar to, who I am and what I've done in my life. I used to tour with the California Express, who were
Express.
the kin of the famous Tex Williams. So I toured with them for almost 6 years, singing, country music. I was brought up with 9 horses, and we used to ride, and um, in Jim Canna shows. And we had a big, huge tack room, and every single wall was filled with, ribbons and trophies and things like that because we were pretty good at what we did back then. So, but, that's who she is in this script. I just wish somebody would, come forth and bring it back. Somebody bring back the Monroes.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people would love it. And here's the thing. It doesn't have to be on a major network. You could, with streaming today, you could put anything on any streaming network, and that's where the streaming networks need to get together with
I
somebody
agree.
tied to the Monroes because guess what? I still say to this day people would watch it because there's still a loyal fan base out there, and I think
Huge.
the show would be as popular today as it was back then.
I agree. Well, a lot of people don't know this, but they actually released Shout Factory, purchased the rights from 20th Century Fox to remaster all 26 episodes, and they actually released it in Walmart only.
Yeah.
And it was funny because every time one of my fans would call me up on a video chat, and I do that all the time, they'd be in Walmart saying, "There's nothing on the shelves. It says sold out. So, 7 years ago, it was sold out all the time on the shelves. And so that tells me that there's a new breed of families that know all about the Monroes. And it would just be wonderful for a network to, bring it back. And if you're ever wanting, the DVD, it's on Amazon for $9.99, all 26 episodes. So,
And it's got to make you feel good, Tammy, to know that it's sold out like that. Because, yeah, I mean, sure, you want the fans to have the opportunity to be able to purchase it, to buy it, and to have it. But when it's sold out, you know that there's fans that love that show, and that's got to be the ultimate validation for you as a.
it was. I'm sure that if someone filters on my Facebook, they'll find photos of a fan taking a photo of the shelf where it says the Monroes sold out, and things like that. So, and then, a lot of people basically, sent videos. I'd watch them go into Walmart and they'd go up to the shelf and it would say sold out. And I never found one person that was able to go and find it. And the funny thing is, if someone filters Facebook, it shows me on the very first day, 7 years, I guess it was 7 years ago, walking into Walmart, and I did a go live. And it shows me asking this young gentleman, Junior, if the Monroes, if he had a box, of stock and I wanted to buy the very first DVD, to which I did. And guess who I gave it to? Barbara Hershey. And he opened up a box, and I was crying. And I asked him, I said, "Do you have any Kleenex?" He says, "No." And he hands me this big, humongous commercial uh, paper roll. So here I am wiping all of my tears with this big, huge commercial paper towel. It was too funny, but that's on Facebook Live as well. You can actually filter it and find the one where I waited for Walmart to open and I walked in and I put it on live, and the whole thing just panned out. It was great. I loved it.
Yeah, it really was. And, you know, uh, Tammy, one of the things I thought was your finest work ever was, and again, I touched on it earlier when I introduced you, but a show I loved in the 90s, I think it was 1989, 1990, was Roller Games. And number 22 was a classic character for the Detroit
Number
Devils.
22.
And you got to, what was
Yeah,
cool about it
I sure
was
did.
you got to play the villain on that show. And it was like, it was almost, I don't
Yes.
want to compare it to wrestling, but it was like in the sense that it was scripted, but you were playing a part. And boy, did you play it well, because I mean, you really made people hate you during that time, but it was so much fun watching you uh, do that. So talk about being in roller games, because I still get pumped up. I could still hear
Oh
that
my
song in the back
gosh.
of my head, you know? So, yeah.
Just so you know what's going on, we have some sort of a connection. I don't know. Every once in a while, uh, your words won't come through all the way, but I know what you're saying. But anyways, um, what happened was my sister was a waitress for a country bar called Dodge Saloon. And one of the entertainers there was Troy Walker. And Troy taught me a lot about entertaining and holding the microphone and singing and stuff like that. Well, he's also best friends with the famous John Hall and Ralphie Valadares of the LA T-Birds. And that's how the connection was, created back then, was because of them. Troy asked my sister and I if we wanted to go roller skating, and we said absolutely. And we went to the roller drome, which was in Pico Revere at the time. And I met John and I met, Ralphie, and they just started watching how I skated. And I used to skate, as a little girl, using those, steel ones that actually, you know, go in and out like an accordion type situation. But I loved skating so much. And they asked me if I wanted to go up on the bank track. And I absolutely said, yes, 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 yes. So the next thing I know, I'm being taught by Ralphie and John, how to um, skate the bank track, and it was such a blast. I loved it. And then there was John wanted to be on the LA T-Birds, and at the time, Georgia Hall and Fabuloso, I think is what was his name, but they wanted me on their team. And of course, Georgia, she won out. So the next thing I knew, I was number 22 on the Detroit Devils.
And Tammy, one of the things, like I said, every Saturday when I would see that show, I would get pumped up when I'd hear that theme song. It was a great theme song. But what was interesting too, they would make like trades during that season. So sometimes somebody that was on the Devils would be traded to the Thunderbirds. So it was really thought out well how they did it. And I know it was an updated version to roller derby, but I really felt like it was a lot different than roller derby because you had all these different things, all the elements into it. And it was really like just a great show. I thought they did a great job.
Yes, we had a lot of fun. Yes, it was scripted back then, but people tended to do their own thing as well. When they found out who I was actually targeted at one point in time where the young lady threw me over the railing. You're supposed to actually throw the girl into the railing so that she can basically slow down her fall so it doesn't hurt her too much. She threw me all the way over the railing. And I got so mad, my father told this story until the day he died. He says, my daughter jumped up and came out of that audience like like a pack of hornets.
Yeah.
And since I was raised on horses, I knew how to swing. So I just grabbed the railing and I swung over it as if I was mounting a horse. And I tore after that young lady, and I grabbed her and I threw her into the infield, and I jumped on her and started banging her head into the ground because that's just who I was back then. Don't do things bad to me or else I'll have to do them bad back to you. So, it's funny because I did the same thing to a young girl that lived next to us. She wanted to steal my pony. She started hitting my pony and my pony was pregnant. And so I jumped off the pony and I jumped on her and kind of rubbed manure all up in her face. So
Right.
just like, don't mess with me.
Yeah. So, so Tammy, this is interesting enough right here. You wrote a book and
Yeah,
called "I Can Do Anything," and really, Tammy, you like so many other people, I don't think fans really truly understand. Wow, you're getting a lot of fame as a child, and you're getting all this attention. You go through a lot of struggles too because you can't be a normal
that's
kid.
right.
Like you're not going to be able to go play at recess or go hang out afterwards. You're working all the time and trying to juggle school and stuff. So while people think that this fame is great for kids, sometimes the fame is stressful as well. And I don't.
Sometimes it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, my son, he's 27 now, but when he was just, very, very young, probably six on but I'm sure you've heard of Shirley Jones from the Partridge
Oh
Family.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, well, her husband, Marty Ingalls, took a liking to my son at age 6, I believe it was. And thank God he did, because when my son was in elementary school, he was always targeted because of who I was. And so, unfortunately, the bullies came out and they hurt my son. And I think there's even a video that was shot by a gang of my son, being beaten up by an adult, um, an adult child, or whatever you want to call it, 18 years old. But I mean, unfortunately, we become targets, and that's the sad part. But thank God to Marty Ingalls one of my best longtime friends, Bill Roberts. They helped my son through the legal part of everything, and my son's fine today. So if it wasn't for Shirley and Marty and Bill Roberts, my son might have been, not in a good place. So, but they saved him. So they always got him the best people, and so that's what's you know that's what happens. I mean, we're not rich. We're filled, our house is filled with love. And, even though you're in the movie business, I also I worked at Northrop Aerospace. I worked at Hughes Helicopters. I mean, I'm a normal, everyday kind of girl, and I've worked my whole life, worked very hard. That's the one thing that my father and my mother instilled in us is that, you have to work very hard for what you get. So, I never try to mix the two worlds, the entertainment life versus, your regular life. Your regular life, and the job that you have, that's the one that feeds you.
Yeah.
In the entertainment life, that's the one you have fun with. So, but I'm very proud of who I am, the life that I've led, what I've done, and it's all in my book. It's got the highs and the lows and even the awfuls. So it's a little bit of everything.
Right. And
And I'm so sorry. I even had a contest for I didn't know how to create the cover. And the cover was actually through a contest that I allowed my fans to participate in. And I chose the design on the cover, and the artist is Peter McDonald, and he's from Australia. So, I mean, I allowed the fans to participate in designing the cover of my book. So, my very first book.
talk about how long would you say it took you to write that book, Tammy? I mean, obviously, it it's years of memories, as a child and being in the business. But how long would you say it took you to write it?
4 years almost.
Wow.
Yeah, almost 4 years. It's when I got laid off. I was an executive secretary for a big, huge oil company back then when COVID came out, and they lost a lot of money on a contract. And so I was laid off, and I figured, shoot, instead of just sitting here at home, nobody's hiring right now. I might as well write my book. It was Shirley Jones that actually told me to write the book. So if it wasn't for her, it would have never come about. So,
Let me ask you. I mean, you talked about the highs, the lows, and the rough times and stuff. But I mean,
yeah.
did you did you have fun writing it? I mean, like, what it wasn't. I would look at it as you didn't say, "Oh, this is like tedious to do." I feel like every time you wrote, you enjoyed doing it. Like, you enjoyed telling your story.
I did. I really did. Some mishaps happened in the beginning of the book, but I got through that. And what I did was I just reprinted the entire book and just started going through it. And as I was going through it and taking out stuff, and I was adding things too, because as you go through and you read your own story, other memories pop up while you're doing it. And so it gets a little bit easier, but I had never written a book before. So I was a little intimidated, but I kept having to tell myself I can do anything. So, and I finished it, during the COVID years. So,
And it's
and
really,
then
it's really
go
true.
ahead. I'm sorry.
It's
Yeah.
really true. You can do anything because think about it. Uh, Actor, singer, athlete, writer. You've done all of them. So, I mean, in a lot of ways, I mean, it really typifies who you are because you've done those things. And I'm sure there's and singer as well. So, I mean, you're doing everything. So, I mean, what I think you're telling people in the book, as far as what the message you're trying to send is, if you have a passion for something, do it. Don't let anybody tell you can't.
That's exactly what I'm trying to tell everybody. If you have a passion, and you have to focus on that passion and really ask yourself, can I do this? You don't ever want to tackle something that you feel that you might not be able to do realistically. And that's basically, I have the choice of changing. Can't get stuck in the mud and it's still there. Choose another way. That's something that my father always, taught us. if we chose a path and that path was not panning out, we have the choice, instead of continuing that path and failing, we have the choice to change our path and choose another direction. And so that's one of the things that my father always taught me. And that's how you become a winner, in my opinion.
Right. So Tammy, let me ask you, what is there any projects you have upcoming? And one of the things, Tammy, that I really think that I mentioned writer, athlete, singer, actor, all this stuff, but I really think that you and some of the cast members from the Monroes should get together
I
and do a
totally
Monroes
agree.
podcast. I think that's
I
something.
totally
I
agree.
think that's
I would
something that would be
love
great.
that.
So I, So I really hope that happens. But what can we look forward to down the road for Tammy Locke?
Well, right now I'm actually in the midst of a major remodel of my house. My husband's the best flooring guy in 4 counties. And like if you want, the best flooring guy, you definitely want my husband. So we're actually just doing that right now. For right now, I don't have anything on the horizon yet, but that's not to say that it won't happen.
Well, I think that's a great answer. And Tammy, I want to thank you for giving me a few minutes today. It was a real honor for me. Been a fan for a long
Absolutely.
I've been a fan for a long time, and I just applaud you for the work you've done. And everybody knows who Amy Monroe is. And if that's your legacy, that's a great legacy to have because everybody loved Amy Monroe. And I really do think you're a credit to the business. And I really appreciate what you gave myself and so many fans throughout the years. So hopefully, this isn't the final story. I want to see, you
Oh
know,
no, my
yeah.
story goes on and on. And what people don't know is even though it's a play on words, I can actually, from wet to dry to fly, an F-18, I can make it and produce it. Working at Northrop, I started on the instrumentation, panels and soldering all of the wires to make the toggle switches work and stuff. And then I was put into the graphite composite world, and that's where we did the speed brake and the leading edge of the F-18, and it was all graphite composite. So as far as I'm concerned, everybody or anybody can do anything. All you have to do is choose your path and make it happen.
Most definitely. And you've done that your whole career. And I do appreciate you giving me some time today and just keep up the good work. And thank you again.
Absolutely, Mike. Thank you
Well,
so much, and true honor.
thank you. And folks, there you have it. And the message that Tammy sends to me, to fans everywhere, is don't dream it, be it. That's what I look at when I look at her. And she's a credit to the business. She's a wonderful and talented actress. But more importantly than that, if you just got to watch this interview the last half hour, she's an even better person. And she really inspired myself and so many fans to do their very best and do whatever they want to do and go out there and do it. And that to me will be
Amen.
that will be Tammy Locke's legacy. For In the Spotlight, I'm Mike
Buy
Kenichi.
my book
And Buy the Book is right. It's a great read.
on
And
Amazon.
yep. And of course, that's Tammy Locke. For In the Spotlight, I'm Mike Kenichi saying good night, everyone.